Hi everyone, I'm back and we're about to start the assembly of our blocks for the puzzle to quilt. So the first block we're going to play with is the diamond 4 patch. So I'm just going to take everything out of that bag. And you should have 4 different piles, 4 different colors, and they're all clipped together. So each stack is going to make 1 block. So if you go to your page 11 of the pattern, this is the floating diamond 4 patch. And you can see there the 4 colors that we're making. So those are the 4 colors that should be in your bag. So you got your purple, your teal, your orange, and your blue. So the way that I'm going to set this up and do this first bag, showing you how you can do all 4 blocks pretty much at the same time, just to show you how that looks. And then after that, I'm just going to go ahead and make 1 block of each, so you can see how we assemble each of the blocks. And some of you are going to want to just do 1 block at a time, and that's okay too. It just you need to find your flow and develop what works, what method works for you. So don't feel like because I'm doing it this way that this is the way that it has to be done. Everybody has a different flow of to work with, so just do what's feeling right for you. So what I would do is I would take 1 pile. I'll start with my blue on the bottom. So we're telling you here that you should have 2 dark 5" by 5" squares here, and then you should have 8 light and 2 dark again. And we've given a symbol to each one of this. So this is your @ symbol, this is your pound symbol, and this is your $sign. And we've done that just to make it easier in the instructions for you to, instead of having so many words, the symbols are easier to see and read. So what we need to do with this block is make 2 floating diamonds using your 5" by 5" that has the @ sign beside it, and 8 of the 3 by 3" squares that has the pound key beside it. These ones are your $sign squares, and we're not really doing anything with those, so we're just going to leave those right now. So what I would do is I'm going to be using this 5" square and these 8 3" by 3" light squares to create that block. So I'm going to put them side by side like that. And then I'm just going to put this one down here. And actually, I'll put it up at the top because we're not going to be using it, so it's going to be out of the way. Then I would take my second color and I would do the same thing. So I would just put it on top. So my 2 5 by 5s and 2 up here. So you have 2 5 by 5s at the top and 2 5 by 5s here, and then your 8 3 by 3s over here. Then I would take my teal and do the same thing. Put my 8 teals here, my 2 5 by 5 dark teals at the top, and 2 in my second pile down here. Then I would take my purple, put my 3 by 3s here with the other ones, take 2 of my 5 by 5s and put them in this pile, and 2 at the top. So these 4 we're not going to be using right away. We're going to be creating that floating diamond with these 2 pieces of fabric. So the first thing that we're going to do, and again, I'm just going to refer you back to the page. So page 5 is the floating diamond. So there is a page of instructions for each different type of floating square that we're making. So this one is on page 5. So you're going to take your 5 by 5 and you're going to take 1 of the 3 by 3 and you're going to put them right side together, starting at the top left corner. So you're going to just line them up exactly like that. I picked up 2 here. So just use 1 at a time. So you're matching up your top left corner, and the sides of your square should be lined up with the sides of your dark purple. So it should look like that. So this is where I talked about 3 tools earlier in the supply list. And this is where you would use one of those tools. If you don't have one of those tools, what you're going to do is just grab a marking pen and you're going to just draw a line from the top right corner of your light square to the bottom left of your light square, right from corner to corner. So you're going to go like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew from the top right to the bottom left. And then we're going to trim. So usually when I do this square, if I have the room, I will do both of those corners at the same time. So I will line this one up. And I will do the same thing. I will just draw a line from corner to corner. So you can see here that we're going from the edge of your dark square to the other edge of your dark square. If you're drawing a line and you're drawing it into the center of your dark square, you don't have it, you're not drawing it the right way. So it has to be from edge to edge. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to sew on that line. If you don't want to do all the drawing of the lines, there are different ways to address that. I am going to use the Fast to Sew tool. So I'm going to just show you that tool. It looks like this. You can maybe see it with my hand underneath it here. So you can see I've got a rectangle cut out of here. This is it's going to sit underneath my foot, and this space is where your feed dogs are going to be, right here. And what this red line is representing in this case is this diagonal line. So by lining up my square, when I'm going to sew, my needle's going to be right there. I'm going to line up the corner and line up my bottom corner with the bottom red line here. And just follow. So when you're sewing, you're not looking here, you're actually looking here and making sure that that corner stays right on that line as you're sewing through your machine. Okay, so all of the three tools that I talked about, the Fast to Sew, the Seam Sew Easy, or the Sew Straight Sew Guide, all work the same way. You just need to cut out that rectangle and get it to make it fit on your machine. When you get to your machine though, it's not just put it down and go. You have to secure this to the bed of your machine, and most of these will come with little sticky circles or rectangles that you put underneath your guide, and it'll stick to the bed of your machine. Mine is pretty old. It's been around for a few years, so I don't have those sticky things anymore. So I'm just going to use Scotch tape. So I'm going to just put this on the bed of my machine, and the important thing is here that you put it on straight, because if it's not straight, you're not going to be sewing straight. So you can do this a couple ways. Like on my machine, on the cover of my bobbin case, I have lines on my bobbin case, so I can use those to make sure that my red line is on top of that white line right in the center of my bobbin case cover, so that I know that my tool is straight on the bed of my machine. So most bobbin cases will have that. You also have lines on your plate that has like a 1-inch line or a 5/8 line. You can use that to line up your tool. Those of you who have a baby lock machine with a laser, I'll just show you how that works. So you can see here, I've got a green grid illuminated. I'm going to use that to get my tool on here nice and straight. So I'm just going to line that up like that. And then I'm just going to grab my Scotch tape, and I'm just going to just tack that down like that. So that's how you would place that tool on the bed of your machine. So you want to make sure you're right over top that line right in front of your foot. Okay, and actually mine's too far up, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit here. Alright, so like that. So if you have that tool, you can do that. If you have the laser beam, you don't even need this tool. You can just use your laser beam. So just depends what type of machine you have and what you're doing. So we're going to do this one. So I'm just going to, the other thing too, I'm going to use my open-toed foot for this because I actually want to see my line all the way to my needle. All right, so you're lining up the top corner of your light square with your needle, and the bottom corner is right on the line, the center line, which is usually red. So your corner is right on that line. You're going to bring down your foot. So I'm looking down at the bottom, following my line. The tip of my square is right on that. So then I would just do my next square. So we just line it up. Line up with your needle, make sure the bottom corner is on your red line, and just keep your eyes on that bottom corner. Okay, so I'm just going to stop there for right now just to show you what I'm doing here. So you can see here, I'm just going to take this apart. I used a white thread here so you can see that my line is right in the corner of my purple square. If you're off to the side of that corner, either way, and it just takes a needle width, you're going to have a jog in your fabric when you press that over. So you see right now that my line is continuing with the side of my purple square. If I'm off just a needle width, when you go to press that over, it's going to create a jog like that. And you don't want that. So that's going to take the precision out of your half square triangle. So you want to make sure that when you're sewing these, you're right in the corner of your square. And that's applicable to all of these, whether it's the floating method that we're doing or whether it's the traditional way. That's the trick behind a successful half square triangle. So I'm I just wanted to show that to you. So I've got these two done. I'm just going to take this one off right now. So then I would just continue. I would take my turquoise square and I would just continue chaining these in. So you just put this on like that. So again, I'm lining up my corners, making sure I'm even with my sides. Make sure it doesn't move by the time you get to your machine. And again, top corner is right in front of the needle, and your bottom corner is on the red line at the bottom, and keep your eye on the bottom. Okay, so once you've got that one through, then grab your next one. And again, right sides together. So line up your top corner and your sides. Okay, so once I've got that side done, I'm just going to take these off. And I'm just going to clip them apart. And I'm going to do the other side before I trim. Alright, so before we start sewing on our second square, I'm just going to reorganize my squares here and put them in order. So I'm going to put my blue ones at the bottom, then my orange ones. So basically I'm just kind of reorganizing myself before I get going again. And I'm putting my squares all the same way. And it should actually be this way because we did the top left first. So now before I trim, I'm actually going to go and add my second square. So earlier when I had my second square on here, just ignore that part. I was just a step ahead of myself. This is where you want to put your second, when you want to put your second square kitty corner to the other one. So when we do our floating diamond square, we do the top left and then we do the opposite corner. And then after we'll do the next two opposite corners. So you want to do your opposite corners first. So this is where I'll put my second square on here. So again, I'm just lining up my corners. They're right sides together. And I'm just going to sew from corner to corner like that. So I'm just going to start doing that. And again, I'm just going to chain these through. So again, the top tip of your square is in front of your needle, and the bottom tip is on that red line on your tool, or you're just following the line that you've drawn. So again, I'm just going to do one square at a time here, but I'm going to chain them all through. All right, now that I've done chaining those through, I'm just going to cut these apart again. And now we're going to trim on both sides of the square. All right. So for this, I'm just using my smaller rectangle. So I'm putting my 1/4 inch line on the seam that I've just sewn across my triangle and to trim like that. Turn it around and do the other side at the same time. I'm going to trim all of those and then we're going to press them. Okay, so now that we've pressed all of these, or trimmed all of these, we're going to go and press. So again, we're just pressing the seam first, or setting the seam first, sorry, and then we're just pressing over. So again, here you can see how these seams are just following. So it looks square. There's not a jog in the square. Okay, so now that we have all of these pressed, we're now going to add the 2 other corners. I'm just going to pick this up. So I've got my colors in order here. So now we're going to add a square to these 2 corners. So I'm just going to start with this one down here. So again, I'm just lining up my square, and then I'm just going to go and press or so. And again, you're going to want to make sure that you're sewing from corner to corner, from the side, from one side of your dark purple to the other side of your dark purple square. And again, I'm just going to chain these through. Once I'm done sewing this corner, I'm going to do the opposite corner right away. Okay, so we've got one side done. So I'm just going to clip these apart and restack them again. And then we're just going to put that last corner on before we trim again. All right, we've got our 2 last squares on each corner. So I'm just going to clip these apart and we're going to trim them again. So again, we're just trimming 1/4 of an inch away from the seams that you've just sewn. And again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'd like to do 2 corners at a time. If you want to do 1 at a time, that is totally fine as well. Alright, now we'll go to the iron and press these. So again, we're just going to set the seam first and then just press over. Okay, so now we have all of our floating diamond squares made, and this is what they should look like. So you can see here, you should have about 1/2 inch from this point to the edge of your triangle, which is what, so when you sew your 1/4 inch seam, your diamond is going to be floating in the center of your square. And these should be a 5-inch square, same as the squares that we haven't used yet. So at this point, you can double check that to make sure you're pretty close to the 5-inch. And if you see you have a few little ears sticking out, you can just sliver trim those and make them nice and neat. Mine look pretty good, so I'm just going to carry on here. So again, we're just going to set up our squares in order. So I'm just going to go refer you back to your page 11 again. So back to your instructions for the floating diamond 4 patch. So row 1 is going to be, I'm going to start with the blue again. So one of your 5 by 5-inch squares that have the dollar symbol beside. And then you're going to put one of the pieced ones that you just finished making, your floating diamond. And then your second row is going to be the opposite. So you're going to start with your floating diamond and end up with your dollar sign square. So I'm just going to lay them all like that. So I'm just going to put my orange next. So I'm going to put that one there and that one there. My floating diamonds like that. Then my teal. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just laying out my block the way that I'm going to sew it together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew row 1 together, and then we're going to sew row 2 together, and we're going to be pressing towards the square, your dollar sign square. Okay, so first we're going to just press, or we're going to sew first. So to do this, I'm going to take off my open-toed foot, and I'm going to go back to my 1/4 inch foot. And I'm just lining up my top and my bottom. They should be right one on top of the other. So I'm just going to sew all of my row 1s first. Okay, so I'm just going to break there and I'm going to cut these apart. And I'll put these back up so that they're in the right order again. Making sure your floating diamond's on the right hand side. And now I'm going to do my second row. So this time your floating diamond will be on the bottom. Alright, so we've got our second row sewn. So again, I'm just going to put these back in order. And now we're going to press. So for the top row, we're pressing to the left. We're pressing towards the non-pieced square, so the one that was labeled with the dollar sign. So that's going to be row 1. Then we'll grab row 2, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're still pressing towards that square that was labeled with the dollar sign. So we'll bring this back to our table. And now we're just going to sew our 2 rows together. So I just have my colors in opposite order here, but they're still all in the same order. So that we pressed them so that when you go to put these together, you can lock your seams together. So if you just take your top row and just slide it down until it catches on that seam, it just snugs up to the bottom seam. So it should feel nice and flat. If you're on top, slightly on top, it's going to feel like a little mountain. And if there's a space in between, it's going to feel like there's a little valley in there. So what you want is a nice snug fit. And then it just feels nice and flat. So you can actually pin that together. And if you're going to pin it, I usually like to pin across. So I start on that side and end up on that side of my seam. One of the reasons I do that is that when I'm coming down with my sewing machine, I like to get my needle down into the seam before I have to pull my pin out. Otherwise, I have to pull my pin out before my needle actually gets to that seam. So I'm going to put my machine, and I'm just going to chain these through again. And also, when you come to a seam that you're trying to match up, it's always good to stop just before and just slow down and go slow over that seam. So I'm going to stop there, pull my needle out, or my pin out. The reason we slow down is because the faster you're going, the more likely things can shift. So go through nice and slow, there's less chance of shifting away. So same thing, I'm going to bring row 2 down, bring row 2 on top, and I'm just going to slide this down till it just snugs up to that seam. And we'll just pin that again. Like that. In a perfect world, the top here should be matching with the bottom. The top and bottom should be right on top of one another. Okay, then we'll do our teal. So same thing, you just want to slide that down till it catches on that bottom seam. Like that. Got our last one. Alright. You've got our blocks done. You've got 4 blocks done, our floating diamond 4 patch. And you're just going to press towards row 2. So you've got your squares sitting like this. And we're pressing towards the bottom. That seam. So if you're pressing towards the bottom, what you want to do is make sure that row is on top. So row 2 is on top. And then you're going to press. Make sure everything's nice and flat on the back. So my row 2 is right here. I'm just going to put my row 2 on top. Row 2 on top. Press, reset. All right, so this is how we're going to proceed, or you would proceed with the other bags. For the other 8 bags, I'm not going to sew all 4 blocks for you. I'm just going to do one just to speed things up, but you can set yourself up the way I did for this one, or you can choose to do them one at a time too, it doesn't matter. So we're going to move on with the shoe fly, and I'm just going to do one of those blocks for you, so I'll be right back with that.